Let's review complex numbers. We are actually doing quadratic functions, and here we are going to use quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is given to you as x equals to minus b plus minus square root of b square minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now this formula is used to solve quadratic equations of the type y equals to ax square plus bx plus c, right? So the solution of this equation, that means when is y equals to 0. So those solutions are given by this formula, right? Now if b square minus 4ac is negative, then the square root of a negative number is not a real number. It is a complex number, right? You get minus within the square root. So if we are doing it in the domain of real numbers, we say the roots do not exist. But if we are doing in the domain of complex numbers, then roots do exist, but they are complex, right? So they are not real. So they are a set of numbers which we call imaginary numbers, right? So we have imaginary numbers, right? So imaginary numbers. So I or iota is that imaginary number, and I is equal to square root of minus 1, or you could say that I square is minus 1. So if you get something in negative in the square root, for example, if you get negative 2, then in that case you could write this as I square root of 2, and then that will be a solution. So therefore it's important for us to understand operations with this imaginary number I or iota, right? So iota is its Greek name, and we say iota or I. So we'll use both the terms in our discussion. Now that's the background, and now let's figure out what this is. So when we have to multiply 4i times 5i, what do we get? We multiply the numbers. 4 times 5, which is 20, and then I times I is 20, I square, right? And I square is negative 1, so we get 20 times negative 1, which is minus 20, right? So that is how you have to do operations in complex numbers, correct? Now let's do the second one. It is minus 3 times 4, which is minus 12, and then we get I times I, which is I square, right? Now I square, as you know, is negative 1, as I used here. So we have minus 12 times minus 1, and that gives us plus 12. Do you see that? So that's how we can solve it, right? So I think these two steps clearly show you how to use I square. I square is basically minus 1, correct? Let's do this one. At this stage, you can stop the video, write down your answers, and then check with mine, right? So I times minus I will give me minus I square, correct? Square root 3 times square root 3, I could write 3 directly, or I could write square root 3 square, or some students write square root 9. All are good enough, right? So the best thing is when you have square root 3 times square root 3, just write the number 3, okay? So I square is negative 1, so we get negative of negative 1, and this is number 3, right? So negative is plus, so we get 3 as our answer, right? The last one for us on this side is 2i times 3i, so 2 times 3 is 6. I square, let me write I square this time. And then square root 5 times square root 3 is square root 15, right? And I square is what? Minus 1. So we get minus 6 square root 15. So that is our answer, correct? So we have done this set of questions here on the left side, and let's now do the ones on our right, right? So these are simple ones. I've just put some i's there, so imagine number I cube, so that you become really conversant with this. Now whenever you have I square, I cube or such powers, think like this. I to the even power is minus 1, and then you're left with odd power, correct? So here you could write this as I square times I, correct? Now I square is negative 1, so I could write negative I. Is that okay? So that is the way I could do it. Now I to the power of, I could write this as I square times I square. So I could do minus 1 times minus 1 as plus 1. That is how I can write this, right? Now in this case, we have minus 2 cube times I cube, right? Minus 2 cube is minus 8, and I cube will give me what? We just did it, right? I square times I, which is minus I, right? So I can write this as minus I, right? And therefore, I can write this as minus is plus. So I'll write this as plus 8i. Is it okay? That is how we do it. Now here this is minus is outside and 4 is power of I only. So it's minus, and so it is I square square. You can write it like this also. Now I square is negative 1. So negative 1 square will be positive. So we get negative 1 as our answer, right? So go through this video once again so that you understand how you multiply complex numbers. And then we'll explore more of finding equations or finding solutions for quadratic equations when the domain is complex numbers, not just real. Okay? I hope that helps you. Thank you and all the best.